Will you be my husband? The words echoed through the grand ballroom, and for a moment, no one moved. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead like frozen stars. Hundreds of guests stood perfectly still. Executives, investors, reporters, and socialites stared at the stage as if they had stopped breathing. At the center of it all stood Claire Harrington, the billionaire CEO whose name appeared on magazine covers and business networks every week. And standing across from her was a man wearing a simple navy suit that had clearly seen better years. Ethan Brooks looked as though he wished he could disappear. His hands remained at his sides. His eyes widened slightly. Not because he wanted attention, but because attention had never wanted him. A few seconds earlier, the room had been buzzing with conversation. Champagne glasses clinked. Cameras flashed. Waiters moved quietly between tables. Then Claire had taken the microphone and changed everything. "There are many successful people in this room," she said softly. "People with money, influence, and power." The room listened. But only one person taught me what real character looks like. Silence deepened. Ethan felt every pair of eyes turning toward him. He wanted to look away. He wanted to escape. But Claire continued. "And tonight, I want to ask him a question." Somewhere near the front row, a reporter lowered his camera. A board member slowly removed her glasses. Even the musicians had stopped moving. Ethan could hear nothing except the sound of his own heartbeat. Then Claire stepped closer and asked the question that would dominate headlines across the country by sunrise. "Ethan Brooks, will you be my husband?" No one spoke. No one laughed. No one understood. Because 3 weeks earlier, Ethan Brooks had been the man nobody chose. 3 weeks earlier, he sat alone at a community fundraiser in Cedar Ridge, Ohio, trying his best to enjoy a Saturday afternoon with his 9-year-old daughter. The event filled the town square with music, food trucks, and families enjoying the first warm weekend of spring. Children chased balloons across freshly cut grass. Local vendors lined the sidewalks. The smell of barbecue drifted through the air. Ethan remembered thinking it felt good to see Lily smile again. Life had not been easy. It rarely was. But moments like this made the struggle feel worthwhile. Then everything changed. Across the square stood a woman Ethan had spent months getting to know. A woman many people believed might become part of his future. Ethan approached with cautious hope. Lily stood beside him holding his hand. The conversation lasted less than a minute. The rejection lasted much longer. "You're a good man, Ethan," the woman said loudly enough for nearby people to hear. "But good isn't enough. I need someone who can offer more." The words landed gently. The humiliation did not. Several people looked away awkwardly. Others pretended not to notice. Ethan felt Lily squeeze his hand. He forced a small smile. "I understand," he replied quietly. No anger. No argument. No bitterness. Just dignity. As the woman walked away, Ethan knelt beside his daughter and asked if she wanted ice cream. And hundreds of miles away from the ballroom where a CEO would one day ask him to be her husband, fate quietly began changing the direction of his life. The drive home felt longer than usual. Ethan kept one hand on the steering wheel of his aging Ford pickup and the other resting near the center console while Lily sat quietly beside him. The late afternoon sun painted the Ohio countryside in shades of gold, but neither of them seemed interested in the view. For several miles, the only sound was the soft hum of tires rolling across the highway. Finally, Lily broke the silence. "Daddy, why did she say that?" Ethan smiled gently, keeping his eyes on the road. "Because sometimes people are looking for different things." Lily frowned. "But you are nice." Ethan let out a small laugh. "Being nice is important." "Then why was it not enough?" she asked. The question settled heavily between them. Children had a way of finding the truth hidden inside complicated situations. Ethan thought carefully before answering. Sometimes people confuse value with money, or status, or things they can show other people. Lily looked out the window. That sounds sad. Ethan nodded. It usually is. The conversation ended there, but the feeling lingered. Back at their small house on the edge of Cedar Ridge, life returned to its familiar rhythm. Ethan grilled hamburgers in the backyard while Lily completed homework at the kitchen table. The house was modest, with peeling paint near the porch and furniture that had seen better days, but it carried something far more valuable than luxury. It carried peace. Later that evening, after Lily had fallen asleep, Ethan sat alone on the back steps. The spring air felt cool against his skin. Crickets chirped somewhere beyond the fence line. A freight train sounded faintly in the distance. He stared into the darkness without resentment. The rejection had embarrassed him, certainly. But embarrassment passed. Character remained. He had learned that lesson years ago when life took things from him that could never be replaced. The next morning arrived with clear skies and the smell of fresh coffee. Ethan dropped Lily off at school before heading to a manufacturing plant nearly 30 miles away. He spent his days repairing industrial equipment, solving problems that most people never noticed until something stopped working. He liked it that way. Machines were honest. They broke. You fix them. There was comfort in simplicity. Around lunchtime, while replacing a damaged hydraulic valve, Ethan noticed a commotion near the front office. Several luxury vehicles had pulled into the parking lot. Employees gathered near windows, curious about the unexpected visitors. Ethan paid little attention. Important people visited businesses all the time. Their lives rarely intersected with his. By late afternoon, dark clouds had begun gathering overhead. A light rain started falling as Ethan headed home. About 10 miles outside town, he spotted a vehicle stopped along the shoulder of a quiet county road. A silver SUV sat motionless with its hazard lights blinking against the gray sky. Most drivers passed without slowing. Ethan almost did too. Then he noticed someone standing beside the vehicle holding an umbrella that struggled against the wind. He eased his truck onto the shoulder and parked behind the SUV. The woman turned as he approached. For a moment, neither of them spoke. She wore simple clothes, no jewelry, no obvious signs of wealth or importance. Rain tapped softly against the umbrella above her head. Then she offered a polite smile. I was beginning to think nobody was going to stop. Ethan returned the smile. Looks like you could use some help. Neither of them realized that this ordinary moment was about to change both of their lives. Ethan glanced at the SUV and then toward the gray sky. Rain drifted steadily across the empty county road, turning the fields on either side into a watercolor of green and silver. The woman lowered her umbrella slightly and offered an apologetic smile. I promise I am not usually this helpless, she said. Ethan chuckled. Most people who say that usually are not. For the first time, she laughed. It was brief, genuine, and somehow unexpected. Ethan walked around the vehicle and lifted the hood. A cool breeze swept across the open farmland while droplets tapped softly against the metal frame. What happened? He asked. The engine started making a strange noise about 5 miles back. Then everything shut down. Ethan nodded. Any warning lights? A few. I ignored them. That explains a lot. She folded her arms and smiled. You sound like my board of directors. Ethan glanced up. You're what? The woman paused for half a second before answering. My co-workers. Something about the hesitation caught his attention, but only briefly. He returned to inspecting the engine. After a few minutes, he found the issue. A damaged connector had loosened during the drive. It was a simple repair, nothing dramatic, but enough to leave someone stranded. Ethan retrieved a few tools from his truck and got to work. The woman watched quietly. Most people filled silence with questions. She seemed comfortable simply standing there. The rain gradually softened into a mist. The countryside grew quiet except for distant thunder rolling somewhere beyond the horizon. You do this often, she asked. Fix cars on random roads. Ethan smiled. Only on days that end with a Y. She laughed again. Fair enough. A few minutes later, the repair was complete. Ethan stepped back and wiped his hands with a rag. Try it now. The woman climbed into the driver's seat. The engine started immediately. Relief washed across her face. She turned it off and stepped back outside. You have no idea how grateful I am. Ethan shrugged. Glad I could help. She reached into her purse. At least let me pay you. Ethan shook his head. No need. You stopped in the rain. It took 10 minutes. Your time still matters. Ethan smiled politely. So does yours. For a moment, neither spoke. The wind rustled through nearby trees. Somewhere beyond the fields, a church bell rang the top of the hour. The woman studied him carefully. Most people accepted money quickly. Some even demanded it. Yet this man acted as though helping someone was the most ordinary thing in the world. Then let me buy you dinner, she offered. Ethan laughed. That sounds suspiciously like paying me. Coffee. Still sounds suspicious. Thank you, she asked. That sounds reasonable. Ethan considered it. All right. A thank you is acceptable. Her smile widened. There is a diner in town tomorrow evening. You are planning tomorrow already. I like planning. I noticed. Another brief silence settled between them. It felt surprisingly comfortable. Then Ethan glanced at his watch and sighed. I should get going. My daughter is probably wondering where I am. Something shifted in the woman's expression. You have a daughter. Lily. 9 years old. Her eyes softened. She is lucky. Ethan looked genuinely surprised. Most days I think I am the lucky one. The answer lingered in the cool evening air. The woman had spent years surrounded by executives, advisors, investors, and ambitious people chasing the next achievement. Yet this simple mechanic standing on a wet roadside spoke about his daughter as though she were the greatest success of his life. It was a perspective she rarely encountered. I never got your name, she said. Ethan Brooks. I am Claire. He offered a friendly nod. Nice to meet you, Claire. Neither realized how important that introduction would become. As Ethan climbed back into his truck, Claire remained beside her SUV watching him drive away. The taillights gradually disappeared beyond a curve in the road. Most encounters were forgotten within days. Some were forgotten within hours. Yet as Claire stood alone beneath the fading rain, she found herself smiling. For reasons she could not explain, she had a feeling this would not be the last time she saw Ethan Brooks. The next evening arrived wrapped in the soft colors of a Midwestern sunset. Cedar Ridge looked almost painted beneath the fading light. Storefront windows reflected gold across Main Street, and families drifted between shops carrying grocery bags and cups of coffee. Ethan nearly cancelled twice before leaving work. He told himself the meeting was unnecessary. A thank you had already been exchanged. The matter should have ended there. Yet somehow, at 6:30 sharp, he found himself walking through the front door of Miller's Diner. The familiar smell of coffee, grilled onions, and fresh pie filled the air. A waitress waved from behind the counter. Ethan immediately spotted Claire sitting alone in a corner booth near the window. She stood when she saw him approaching. I was beginning to think you changed your mind. Ethan slid into the seat across from her. I almost did. Honesty. I like that. Most people do not. Claire smiled. That explains a lot. Their conversation started simply. Weather. Work. Small town life. Yet somehow, the hours moved faster than either expected. Claire asked thoughtful questions. Ethan answered without trying to impress her. It was a rare combination. Most conversations felt like negotiations. This one felt effortless. Halfway through dinner, the bell above the diner's entrance chimed. Ethan glanced toward the door and smiled. Lily rushed inside carrying a backpack almost half her size. "Daddy!" Claire looked surprised. "You brought her?" She had soccer practice nearby. Lily stopped when she noticed Claire. "Oh." Ethan stood. "Lily, this is Claire." Claire offered a friendly wave. "Nice to meet you." Lily narrowed her eyes suspiciously. "Are you important?" Ethan nearly choked on his coffee. Claire laughed. "Why would you ask that?" "Because important people always dress like they are going somewhere serious." Claire looked down at her tailored jacket. "Fair observation." Lily climbed into the booth beside her father. "Daddy says everybody deserves respect." Claire glanced toward Ethan. "Your father sounds wise." Lily nodded immediately. "He is." Ethan looked embarrassed. Claire noticed. There was something touching about the way he accepted praise. Most people chased recognition. Ethan seemed uncomfortable whenever it arrived. The three of them shared dessert together. Lily talked about school projects, soccer games, and a science fair she hoped to win. Claire listened carefully to every word. Not politely. Genuinely. By the end of the evening, Lily had completely forgotten her earlier suspicion. "You should come to my game Saturday," she announced. Ethan nearly dropped his fork. "Lily." "What?" "People do not invite strangers to soccer games." Claire smiled. "Actually, I would love to." Lily grinned. "See? She wants to." As they stepped outside later, cool spring air drifted through the parking lot. Main Street had grown quiet. A few streetlights glowed softly against the darkening sky. Claire watched as Ethan opened the truck door for Lily. Small gesture. Simple gesture. Yet somehow meaningful. "Thank you for dinner," she said. "You already thanked me." "Then thank you for coming anyway." Ethan smiled. "You are very persistent." "That is what my co-workers tell me." Again, that slight pause before the word co-workers. Again, Ethan noticed it. And again, he chose not to ask questions. As he drove away, Lily leaned forward from the back seat. "Daddy." "Yes?" "I like her." Ethan kept his eyes on the road. "You met her for 2 hours." "That was enough." Ethan laughed softly. But later that night, after Lily had gone to bed and the house had fallen quiet, he found himself thinking about Claire far longer than he intended. And several miles away, in a luxury penthouse overlooking the Columbus skyline, Claire sat alone by a floor-to-ceiling window holding a cup of tea. The city lights stretched endlessly beneath her. Her phone buzzed with messages from executives, advisors, and board members. She ignored every one of them. For the first time in a very long time, the most important part of her day had not happened inside a boardroom. It had happened inside a small-town diner with a single father and a little girl who believed her dad was the wisest man in the world. Saturday arrived bright and clear. The soccer fields at Cedar Ridge Community Park buzzed with the familiar sounds of parents unfolding lawn chairs, children chasing soccer balls, and coaches shouting encouragement across freshly cut grass. Ethan stood near the sideline holding a paper cup of coffee while Lily warmed up with her team. The morning carried the smell of spring and the promise of a perfect day. He honestly did not expect Claire to come. People made polite promises all the time. Important people especially. Yet 10 minutes before kickoff, a silver SUV pulled into the parking lot. Ethan recognized it immediately. Claire stepped out wearing jeans, sneakers, and a simple jacket. No designer labels. No visible signs of status. Just a woman carrying a folding chair and an awkward smile. Lily spotted her first. She came. Before Ethan could respond, his daughter sprinted across the grass and threw her arms around Claire. The gesture surprised both adults. Claire laughed and hugged her back. "I guess that means I am welcome." "You are definitely welcome," Lily declared. For the next hour, Claire sat beside Ethan watching children chase a soccer ball with far more enthusiasm than strategy. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they simply watched the game unfold beneath the clear Ohio sky. The silence felt easy. Comfortable. Rare. Afterward, the three of them stopped at a small ice cream shop near Main Street. Lily spent most of the visit explaining the complicated social structure of fourth grade while Claire listened with complete attention. Ethan noticed that quality about her. She made people feel heard. It was not something money could buy. Several days passed. Then several more. Phone calls became routine. Coffee became dinner. Dinner became long conversations that stretched late into the evening. For the first time in years, Ethan found himself looking forward to seeing someone. That realization both comforted and frightened him. Then everything changed on a Thursday afternoon. Ethan was repairing a conveyor system at work when a coworker walked into the maintenance bay carrying a business magazine. "You know this woman?" the man asked casually. Ethan barely glanced up. Then he froze. Staring back from the cover was Claire. Not just Claire. Claire Harrington, Chief Executive Officer of Harrington Technologies. One of the most influential business leaders in the country. The headline stretched across the page in bold letters. America's most powerful female CEO discusses the future of innovation. Ethan felt the room grow strangely quiet. "You okay?" his coworker asked. Ethan forced a nod. But his eyes never left the magazine. Suddenly every small mystery made sense. The hesitation whenever she talked about work. The expensive vehicle. The occasional phone call she stepped away to answer. The confidence. The composure. The world seemed to rearrange itself in a matter of seconds. That evening, Ethan sat alone on his front porch long after sunset. The magazine rested beside him. Crickets chirped in the darkness. A cool breeze drifted through the trees. His phone buzzed. Claire's name appeared on the screen. He stared at it for several moments before answering. "You found out," she said quietly. Ethan looked toward the dark horizon. "Why did you not tell me?" Silence. Then a soft sigh. "Because I wanted one place where people saw me before they saw my title." Ethan understood the answer. He truly did. Yet understanding did not erase reality. Their worlds were different. Dramatically different. "Claire," he said gently, "I think maybe we both know this changes things." Another silence followed. He could almost hear disappointment settling between them. Not anger. Not resentment. Just sadness. The kind that arrives when two good people realize life is more complicated than they hoped. Inside the house, Lily laughed at something on television. The sound drifted through the open window. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Across the state, Claire stood alone in her penthouse office looking out over a skyline filled with lights. Neither of them knew what came next. But for the first time since that rainy roadside meeting, distance had entered the story. The following week unfolded with a quiet tension neither Ethan nor Claire could fully ignore. They still exchanged messages, but the easy rhythm that once existed between them had changed. Distance had a way of creating questions where certainty used to live. Ethan focused on work. Claire focused on business. Both pretended that was enough. It was not. The storm arrived on a Tuesday morning. Claire was halfway through a quarterly board meeting inside Harrington Technologies headquarters when her chief communications officer entered carrying a tablet. The room immediately fell silent. Executives exchanged uneasy glances. Claire took one look at the screen and understood the problem. A photograph filled the display. It showed her sitting beside Ethan and Lily outside the ice cream shop in Cedar Ridge. Another image showed the three of them leaving Miller's Diner. The headline underneath was already spreading across financial media. Billionaire CEO's mystery relationship sparks questions. One board member leaned forward. How serious is this? Another adjusted his glasses. Investors are already asking questions. Claire remained calm. About what? About him. She looked directly at the speaker. His name is Ethan Brooks. The executive hesitated. Exactly. Around the table, uncomfortable silence settled. Claire knew what they were really saying. Ethan was not wealthy. He was not connected. He did not belong to their world. Some people measured worth by balance sheets. Others measured it by character. The room clearly favored the first category. Meanwhile, nearly 100 miles away, Ethan discovered the story while eating lunch alone in the employee break room. Several co-workers stared at him as he entered. Others quickly looked away. One man held up his phone. You know a billionaire. Ethan sighed quietly. Apparently. By the end of the day, the story had spread across social media. Thousands of strangers suddenly had opinions about a man they had never met. Some called him lucky. Others called him opportunistic. A few suggested he was chasing money. Ethan found the accusation strangely exhausting. The people making them knew nothing about his life. Yet they spoke with complete confidence. That evening he sat at the kitchen table helping Lily with math homework when his phone rang. Claire's name appeared on the screen. He stepped outside before answering. The spring air felt cool against his face. I am sorry, Claire said immediately. You did not create this. It still affects you. Ethan looked toward the dark yard. I can handle attention. I am not worried about attention. Claire paused. I am worried about unfairness. Ethan smiled softly. Then you are worried about life. For a moment she laughed. Then the laughter faded. The board wants me to distance myself. Ethan closed his eyes. The words hurt more than he expected. Not because he blamed her? Because he understood exactly why they had been spoken. And what do you want? He asked. Silence lingered on the line. Finally she answered. I want people to stop deciding who matters based on titles. Ethan stared into the darkness. Somewhere nearby, a wind chime moved gently in the breeze. Claire, maybe they are not completely wrong. Do not say that. Our worlds are different. Our bank accounts are different. Her voice sharpened slightly. That is not the same thing. Ethan had no response. Deep down, he knew she was right. Yet years of disappointment had taught him caution. Across the country, people were discussing them. Investors were questioning her judgment. Reporters were searching for details. And somewhere inside that growing noise, a simple friendship was being tested. Neither realized the pressure had only begun. Because before the week was over, someone from Claire's past would step into the story and make everything far more complicated. By Friday afternoon, the story had become impossible to escape. News websites recycled the same photographs. Comment sections filled with assumptions. Television hosts debated a relationship they knew nothing about. Yet the loudest voice to enter the conversation came from someone neither Ethan nor Lily had ever met. His name was Victor Langley. He was a venture capitalist, a regular guest on financial networks, and according to several magazines, one of the most eligible bachelors in America. More importantly, he was Claire's former boyfriend. Victor appeared on a business podcast that weekend and delivered his opinion with a polished smile. Claire has worked too hard to build her legacy, he said. People in positions of influence should be careful about who they allow into their lives. He never mentioned Ethan by name. He did not have to. The implication spread instantly. By Sunday morning, articles quoting Victor had reached Cedar Ridge. Ethan read one of them while drinking coffee on his porch. He stared at the screen for several seconds, then quietly set the phone down. Inside the house, Lily was practicing spelling words for school. Birds chirped in the maple tree near the driveway. Life continued exactly as it had before. That was the strange thing. The world seemed determined to turn him into a headline, while his actual life remained wonderfully ordinary. Later that afternoon, Claire drove to Cedar Ridge. She found Ethan repairing a loose fence board behind the house. The autumn sunlight cast long shadows across the yard. For a moment neither spoke. Then Claire broke the silence. "I am sorry." Ethan looked up. "You apologize too much. Victor should not have said those things." Ethan returned to his work. People are allowed opinions. Not when they are unfair. He smiled faintly. "Claire, if I spent my life trying to correct every unfair opinion, I would never get anything done." She watched him tighten the final screw. Calm. Unbothered. Steady. The qualities that first drew her toward him now seemed even more remarkable. "The board offered you money," she said suddenly. Ethan stopped moving. "What?" "Someone approached your employer this morning." His expression hardened slightly. "To do what?" "To encourage you to disappear." The words hung heavily in the air. Claire hated saying them aloud. Ethan stared across the yard for several moments. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. Not bitterly. Not angrily. Just quietly. "That is actually kind of sad." Claire blinked. "Sad? Imagine having so much money that you think every problem can be solved with a check." The answer left her speechless. Most people would have been furious. Others would have negotiated. Ethan simply shook his head and continued working. "Did they offer a lot?" he asked. Claire hesitated. "Enough to change most lives." "Good thing I like mine." The simplicity of the answer struck her harder than any speech could have. As the afternoon faded into evening, Lily joined them in the backyard carrying 3 glasses of lemonade. She sat between them on the porch steps while the sky turned orange and gold above Cedar Ridge. The conversation shifted to school projects and upcoming soccer games. No one mentioned headlines. No one mentioned Victor. No one mentioned the board. For an hour, peace returned. Yet later that night, after Claire drove away, Ethan stood alone beneath the stars. He knew the pressure surrounding her was growing. He knew powerful people wanted him gone. And for the first time, he began wondering whether the kindest thing he could do was step aside completely. What Ethan did not know was that Claire had already made a decision of her own. And within days, she would announce it in a way that would leave an entire room speechless. 3 days later, invitations began arriving across the business world. Executives, investors, journalists, and public figures were invited to Harrington Technology's annual Leadership Gala in Columbus. Industry experts assumed the event would focus on expansion plans, new partnerships, and future investments. Nobody suspected Claire Harrington had something entirely different in mind. The evening arrived beneath a clear autumn sky. The ballroom glittered beneath enormous crystal chandeliers. White tablecloth stretched across the room like fresh snow. A string quartet played softly near the stage while servers moved gracefully between guests. The atmosphere felt elegant, controlled, predictable. At least at first. Ethan almost did not attend. When Claire invited him, his first instinct had been to decline. The attention surrounding them had already become exhausting. But after several conversations and one very determined 9-year-old, he reluctantly agreed. "You should go," Lily insisted. "Why?" Ethan asked. "Because sometimes good things happen when people stop hiding." The word stayed with him. Now, standing near the back of the ballroom, Ethan felt completely out of place. Expensive suits filled the room. Luxury watches flashed beneath the lights. Conversations revolved around acquisitions, market forecasts, and investment strategies. None of it belonged to his world. He adjusted his jacket and considered leaving. Then Claire appeared. The room seemed to notice her instantly. Conversation softened. Heads turned. Cameras followed. She crossed the ballroom with calm confidence, but when her eyes found Ethan, something changed. Her smile became genuine. Warm. Personal. For a brief moment, the crowd disappeared. "You came," she said. Ethan smiled. "I made a promise." "To me?" "To Lily." Claire laughed softly. "That sounds more accurate." The evening progressed normally for nearly an hour. Speeches were delivered. Awards were presented. Applause echoed through the ballroom. Ethan remained near the edge of the room, speaking to very few people. Several guests approached him out of curiosity. Others observed from a distance. Some clearly recognized him from recent headlines. Ethan responded to every conversation the same way. Politely. Respectfully. Without trying to impress anyone. Across the room, Claire noticed everything. She noticed how he treated servers exactly the same way he treated executives. She noticed how he redirected praise toward others. She noticed how he never once attempted to benefit from her reputation. The qualities that mattered most rarely appeared on resumes. Finally, near the end of the evening, Claire stepped onto the stage. The room immediately quieted. Hundreds of guests turned toward her. Reporters lifted cameras. Board members straightened in their chairs. Claire adjusted the microphone and looked across the crowd. "Tonight, I was expected to discuss leadership," she began. "I was expected to discuss growth, innovation, and success." Several guests nodded. "But I would rather discuss character." The room grew still. Claire continued. "Over the last few weeks, many people have offered opinions about someone they do not know." Her gaze drifted toward Ethan. They measured him by his bank account. They measured him by his job title. They measured him by everything except the things that actually matter. Silence spread through the ballroom. "I have spent years surrounded by powerful people. Yet the person who taught me the most about dignity, kindness, and quiet strength does not sit in a boardroom." Ethan felt every eye in the room turning toward him. When others offered him money, he refused. When others questioned his motives, he remained gracious. When life gave him reasons to become bitter, he chose character instead. No one moved. No one spoke. Then Claire stepped away from the podium and began walking directly toward Ethan Brooks. The ballroom seemed to stop breathing. Crystal chandeliers shimmered overhead. Camera flashes froze in midair. Conversations vanished. Even the musicians sat motionless. Claire crossed the polished floor one measured step at a time until she stood directly in front of Ethan. Around them, hundreds of people watched in complete silence. Executives who once questioned him. Investors who dismissed him. Reporters searching for the next headline. All of them waited. Ethan looked at Claire, uncertain whether this was really happening. His heart pounded. Not because of the crowd. Not because of the attention. But because he knew Claire well enough to recognize the courage behind what she was about to do. She took a slow breath and smiled. "For weeks, people have asked why I spend time with you," she said softly. Her voice carried through the ballroom without effort. "Some assumed you wanted something from me." A few uncomfortable faces appeared throughout the room. The truth is exactly the opposite. Claire turned slightly toward the audience. "When my car broke down, he expected nothing. When he learned who I was, he pulled away because he thought protecting my reputation mattered more than his own happiness. When powerful people tried to make him disappear, he refused their money without hesitation." She looked back at Ethan. Not because he is stubborn. Because he understands something many successful people forget. The room remained perfectly still. Character is not something you buy. It is something you live. Ethan lowered his eyes briefly. He had never enjoyed public attention. Claire knew that. Yet she also knew some truths deserved to be spoken aloud. "I spent years meeting extraordinary people," she continued. "People with influence, talent, and ambition. But very few possessed what Ethan carries every day. Grace. Dignity. Quiet strength. The ability to choose kindness when bitterness would be easier. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. The words landed harder than criticism ever could. Claire smiled gently. And somewhere along the way, I realized something. Ethan looked up. I stopped imagining a future without him in it. A soft murmur moved through the crowd before disappearing again. Then Claire reached into her jacket pocket and removed a small velvet box. The room froze. Ethan blinked. Across the ballroom, one reporter slowly lowered his camera. Another forgot to take notes. No one wanted to miss what happened next. Claire opened the box. Inside was a simple ring. Elegant. Understated. Meaningful. Ethan Brooks, she said. Her voice trembled slightly for the first time all evening. Will you be my husband? Silence. Absolute silence. Not a phone rang. Not a glass clinked. Not a chair moved. For several seconds, the entire ballroom simply stared. Ethan felt the weight of every eye in the room. Yet somehow, the crowd disappeared. Only one face mattered. Claire's. Then another face entered his thoughts. He turned toward a nearby table where Lily sat frozen with wide eyes. For a moment neither spoke. Then Lily smiled. Small at first. Then brighter. Finally she nodded. Ethan laughed softly. The sound broke the tension like sunlight breaking through clouds. He looked back at Claire. You know, he said, this is definitely not how I expected tonight to go. Gentle laughter rippled through the room. Claire smiled through tears. That is not an answer. Ethan took a slow breath. Then my answer is yes. Applause erupted instantly. People rose from their seats. The sound rolled through the ballroom like thunder. Yet the loudest moment came just before the applause began. That brief instant when everyone understood they had judged the wrong man. Claire slipped the ring onto Ethan's finger. Lily rushed forward and wrapped her arms around both of them. Cameras flashed. Reporters scrambled. Executives applauded. But none of it mattered. Because in that moment, standing beneath the chandeliers, surrounded by noise, Ethan felt something far more valuable than recognition. He felt chosen. Months later, people would remember the proposal. Newspapers would write about it. Television hosts would discuss it. Yet those closest to the story remembered something else entirely. They remembered a man who never chased wealth. A man who never demanded attention.